Hi, welcome back. So in this second video, we're going to be talking about strings and string manipulation. This is super important for getting the most out of ImageJ because string manipulation is key to managing ImageJ's functions, basically. All of the functions in ImageJ have parameters that are defined inside of strings, and so being able to manipulate these strings is absolutely critical for making these functions work. One of the nice things about ImageJ is that you don't necessarily need to remember all of the functions off the top of your head. You know, you're not looking up an enormous amount of documentation to find a function that will do a certain thing, or rather, in terms of how to manipulate that in code. You can go to the macro recorder and make a recording of a command, and that will give you the command itself and all of the parameters that you use that time. So we're going to take a simple duplicate command. We're going to use the macro recorder to record a version of that command, and then we're going to use string manipulation to edit that command to do a couple of different things. So I'll go to the plugins menu, go to macros, select record, and then I'm going to open up an image. I already have an image open here. It's this beautiful image. It's a hyperstack. You can see we've got 3 channels. We've got 11 Z slices, and we have 12 time points, and it's of this cell dividing. Super nice. I'm going to make a duplicate of this image, and I only want to duplicate one slice, one channel. So I'll go to, I'm used to using the shortcut for this, so I may take a moment to find things in the menus, but I go to Image, Duplicate, and then I'm going to leave the title, you know what, I'm going to call the title Duplicate Image. And then I do want to duplicate the hyperstack, but I'm going to select, I just want to select channel 3. I want to select the whole Z stack so I get a Z stack at the end, and I will just duplicate the current time point, which is time point 6. So here I've got 4 different pieces of information that are going to be encoded in this macro recorder. So in the macro recorder, I've got, when I copy this into a new macro window, you can see that I've got the run command, which is in yellow because it's a function, and then it's followed by the first string, which is the name of the function, and then the second string is all of the different parameters that I entered. So I've given it a title. I've said the keyword duplicate here means duplicate the hyperstack, and then I've chosen to duplicate channel 3 and frame 6, and then it's also duplicating all of the Z stack. So because we've specified channels and frames, but we haven't specified Z, it's duplicating all of the Z. So what if we wanted to take this and now instead of duplicating frame 6, we wanted to duplicate frame 5? Okay, so non-programmatically, the easiest way to do that is to just change this 6 for, let's say that we want to do frame 3. Here we go. Frames equals 3. Great. Good job. This isn't really impressive because whilst you have made a change, if you want to run this code again with a different thing, you're going to have to copy and paste that code, and then you're going to have to change again to a different frame. This isn't really impressive or useful to us a lot of the time. So if we instead make a new variable called frame select, we'll set that equal to 3. So this is a numerical. We've made a variable. It contains a number. So every time we call this, it's going to bring up the number 3. Now we replace the 3 in this. And so what we can do now is a process called string concatenation. Concatenation is really just a fancy word for sticking 2 things end to end. It tends to get used in mathematics and in programming. I don't know how much it gets used in mathematics, but it gets used a lot in programming. And so what we're going to string concatenation in ImageJ is super easy. We just use the plus sign and then the name of the variable. So frame select. So if I close duplicate image.tiff and run this, I get the same I get the same result as I had before. Of course, right? Because what I've done is I've just modified this string. So now I've got this one long string. I've closed the string here. You've got to make sure that you close things. Always be checking your text colors in the edit window. So all of this is pink. It's all one string plus whatever the value of frame select is. Let's just take another example. We're going to change the name of the image so it's no longer duplicate image.tiff. We're going to call this protein name again. Good old aniline. Close with a semicolon. And here, because this is going to be inline, so it's going to look a little bit different. I'm going to show you the way that you do this. So you can see that I selected some text. When I hit shift, when I enter the quotation marks, it puts quotation marks around the text that I selected. Because I have quotation marks here to here, this text is now, this is now a variable. So it's now going to look for the duplicate image variable, which doesn't exist, so that would throw a bug. But if I put a plus and go protein name plus, then this will run and I will get something called aniline. Aniline.tiff. Here we go. Cool. And so what I could do is change the value of these variables based on some other programmatic change earlier in the script that I wanted to do. So for example, if I was finding the brightest frame, or if I got the user to click on a frame of interest, then I could change the value of frame select to correspond to those inputs. The protein name could be defined by a dialog box at the start or something like this. If you were producing a general use script to save example images or something like this. The other big use of strings that we use all the time is for file pathing. So every image, every file on your computer has what's called a path. It's the address of the file on the hard drive. And it's what software looks to identify where your file is, to open the data and start interpreting it. And so I'll show you an example of file path here. Get print get info image. You can see the autocomplete is doing me some favors here, but I would like it to do me slightly more favors. Image directory, there we go. That's going to give me a file path. So I'm just going to comment this section out. Okay, it doesn't give me an image directory because this is a duplicate. So fun fact, duplicate images don't exist on the hard drive. They only exist in ImageJ's RAM. So the this image, aniline.tiff, doesn't have a location on the file on the hard drive because I haven't saved it yet. If I go back to celldiv.tiff and run this, it will give me, this is what's called a file path. So we can see that this is located in the users folder, CMCI, documents, image processing, macro examples. Great. And each of those slashes represents a different level of the file structure. So each one of these represents a subdirectory. What this allows us to do is point to files on disk. So we use getinfo image directory all the time. Another thing that we use is getinfo image file name. That tells us what the file name is. So I'm going to show you an example of string concatenation that is useful for getting a full file address. So I will say fpath. So fpath is file path, right? That is a good name for this variable because it's short and it communicates exactly what is contained within the variable. Fpath equals the result of image.directory. And then we'll change this to fname. Then if I say print fpath plus fname, what's going to come out? We're going to get the full file path of the image. So this is how we get the full file path of the active image. One of the things we like to do a lot is have users point to specific files on the hard drive. So for this we use a different command, which is get directory, and you can see that get directory has a bunch of different forms. The one that I use all the time is get directory string, and then I replace this string with I replace the word string with an actual string. Where are your files? When the get directory command is run, it's going to point me to a spot on the computer, and so then I can point the I can point the function to a specific folder, and then it's going to do something at that folder. So I'm going to change fpath. Instead of being the result of get info image directory, it's going to be the result of the get directory command. I'm going to take fname, put that below fpath, and then we're going to use the save as command to save this file as a .png instead of a .tiff. I'm going to make a duplicate of this. We're just going to duplicate this single image. PNG files, as far as I know, don't handle multiple dimensional images. So when I save this as a PNG, it's going to save it as an image that looks like this, as opposed to a confused jumble of three-dimensional data. So we'll use the save as command. This is one that doesn't use the run function, but you can see when I start typing it into the ImageJ macro window, save as, you can see the auto fill tells us what parameters are expected. So we're expected to give it a format and a path. So we're going to save this as PNG, not an ONG file, a ping file. And then we're going to save it to the location fpath. Plus, when a file is saved to a location, you have to specify the directory in which it's going to be saved and also the name of the file. You can't just specify the directory. You have to save with the name of the file as well. So we're going to save fname. Now, fname currently begins with .tiff. So we're going to change that to fname plus .png. Now, see what happens when we run this on this file that isn't technically saved to the disk. So I want to save it in the macro examples folder, and let's find out what I've ended up with in macro examples. So we've got image processing, macro examples, and here we go, celldiv.tiff.png, and that's saved as a PNG file, and when I open it in preview, hey, it looks great. Okay, so that was string manipulation. Basically, it's very straightforward. You use open and close your quote marks, use pluses, double check your quotes, make sure that your text color is the correct color, because otherwise you're going to be trying to interpret strings as variables and variables as strings. That's the basics of strings, but it's a very good foundation for what we're going to use with strings going forward. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about indexing and arrays. These are fundamental concepts in programming, and they're extremely useful for the macro programming language. This is going to allow us to deal with loops that go across multiple different files. It's going to allow us to trim extra characters off file names. Absolutely essential work for macro programming. So see you then.